Thank you.
Work in progress.
Ready. Hello, guys. How are you? So sorry, I was running just a few minutes late. I have summer camp dropping off kids at La Cantera and picking up food for you guys and everything. But once again, my name is Rudy Lozano. I am the broker for Premier Realty Group Platinum. Just want to let you know that our training is not only available every day, but on Monday we have um, I'm teaching CMAs and listing agreements. On Tuesdays, contracts. Every week it's going to be a different contract. Whether I believe last week we had FHA, this week we have conventional, as well as all the addendums and such. On Wednesday we are having the NRA changes and how they manifest into the new forms at the state level through TAR and TREC. So specifically dealing with the compensation, as well as we're covering scripts and checklists and those kinds of things. On Thursday, we are covering the financing for the contract specific to what was specific to the contract that we covered on Tuesday. So on Tuesday, we cover the contract. On Thursday, we cover the financing. On Friday, we cover intermediary, okay, which because we have so many agents, there's a lot of transactions that do involve two of our agents at any given time. And then we have a lot of folks that work at a team as a team and do open houses for one another. And then all of a sudden you're the procuring cause for their listing. So if you are a brokerage that has, you have to have a minimum of 3 agents to include the broker to be able to conduct intermediary. If you are a brokerage that has 1 or 2 people, you cannot do intermediary. Okay. But lo and behold, thank you for joining us. I am going to cover the contract, but I'm also going to cover in just what's going on. First and foremost, you know, success occurs when preparation meets opportunity. We're preparing, guys. We're in the trenches. I'm in the trenches with you. Okay. I normally do not take on buyers and listings and those kinds of things, but I'm involved with you guys every day. I mean, I have people waiting for me as soon as I'm done with this training to cover, structuring contracts, providing comparables to appraisers. I mean, once again, submitting offers, having to do already with the compensation, because we're not waiting until August 17th to be in compliance. We need to do so now. And the reason why I'm having these discussions every day with you is because they change every day. People have different scenarios. They're working with different people. I mean, once again, I would hope and pray that you guys are conducting business at the highest level and immediately conducting business on a client level. Just so that you guys realize is that the entire country is looking to the state of Texas for guidance on a lot of things. There's a lot of states that do not have the continuing requirements that we have every 24 months. Why do you think that ethics class is required annually or every 2 years at the NAR level? Because there's states that don't even have an ethics requirement statewide. And then there's a lot of states that don't even have buyer's agency. We already had buyer's agents agreements for you guys, where you guys could take on prospects or consumers on a client level, therefore making them your client. Because no doubt about it, guys, we have people in this office that have charged, they have always charged more than 3%. We have, for example, we have somebody that does farm and ranch. She charges 4% plus our transaction fee. And she says if they won't pay it, it takes her 45 minutes just to leave her ranch. So why would she do it for 3%? Right? We have different people that do commercial. In this office, we have been involved on commercial deals where the compensation exceeded 9%. I think it was 10% total. There's no restriction when you do commercial and farm and ranch and raw land. There isn't, or even a lot. Because if you're selling a lot for $50,000, do you want to do it for 3%? No. Seller's paying 3, but I'm going to charge you another 2 because it's 100-degree weather outside. I mean, to compensate myself. And then you want to look at lots in the other side of Bernie and Sisterdale, and over there in Atascosa County, or over there on the outskirts of Austin. You can't do it for 3%. So no doubt about it, guys, the commission has always been negotiable. Okay, but based on market conditions and how you conduct business, you can dictate how much your time is worth. The real estate profession is the only profession that you get to work for 30, 60 days or 6 months and still have a possibility of not being compensated. Don't do it to yourself. Collect a retainer fee up front. Collect a retainer fee when you guys are working with people that are supposedly relocating here. They're coming in from out of the country, and they're coming in from out of state. When the surge, the market was crazy back in 5, 6, where all these people from California had just found Texas for the first time, and they would come over and they thought that we were some glorified tour guide. I collected a retainer fee. I mean, it was only $1,000, but hey, $1,000 covered my gas, covered my time for the weekend, So absolutely, you guys can charge retainer fees in your buyer's representation group, representation agreements. Okay, I will back up whatever you want to do as long as we're in compliance. Okay, but you can charge for your time up front. An attorney does it, right? Somebody that's a specialist in their field does it. And how about we cover that? One of the things I tell people is the only people that do not need a realtor are real estate attorneys. But even a brain surgeon, which I have functioned as their realtor, an attorney that isn't that deals with malpractice or family law or whatever, they need an attorney. They want an attorney. Okay. Because an attorney, no doubt about it, can collect a compensation. But if you're not a real estate attorney, that's going to be work. And for you to save 3%, it doesn't make any sense for you to learn something that's not part of your day. Because no doubt about it, guys, how many times have you read the contract? The information about brokerage services? How many times have you reviewed a contract with different financing and all the addendum and having to do your due diligence and everything? And you're going to want to become an expert on one transaction? Why would you want to do that to yourself? So it all starts on Monday with listings, guys, because the listing agent or the listing company, and I hope that our fellow brokers throughout not only our great city or in our great state, but throughout the country take our philosophy, is that it's kind of like raising kids, guys. It takes an army to raise children. Well, it takes an army to close a real estate transaction. And no, I'm not friends with everybody in the world and in the city or whatever. We probably might all know one another. We rub shoulders or, elbows or whatever. But no doubt about it, we are part of the same professional trade association. First and foremost, there's 200 agents in this office, 14,000 realtors in a part of San Antonio Board of Realtors, over 115,000 statewide, and 1.8 million realtors in the country. There's 280 million people in our country. So right now, the Texas has 29 million people. We were anticipated to have 50 million by 2050. Well, guess what? Because of COVID and the sunny state of California kicking out Elon Musk and encouraging him to come to Texas, because we were open to conducting business even shortly after COVID and getting people back to work and them, recuperating their mental state as well as their financial well-being. So all of a sudden, Texas isn't known nationwide. We've always been known as a great state, but now we have international exposure. There's nobody on this planet that doesn't know where Elon Musk lives. And he lives in Austin, Texas. Incidentally, let's talk about that. Austin has the most amount of millionaires in the country. If you guys didn't know that, those are the kind of little things that you need to know. There are over 30,000 millionaires in Austin. We are the number one state that has the most amount of millionaires in such a small, dense population. Opportunity, preparation, success. And success breeds success, right? So I have made it my personal mission, guys, not only to train you guys, to share my knowledge and experience, my interpretation of the law, um, to help you guys be in compliance, to help you protect your license, as well as hopefully make you profitable. Because it's always been my philosophy. It's not just right now, guys. Sure, many of you guys have been with me for many, many years, but for you guys that have been with us, you know that Rudy picks up after 5. I pick up Saturday and Sunday. I pick up on a national holiday. Guys, I was in Europe for 3 weeks last year. And many of you didn't even know I was in Europe. Thank God that I had internet connection. I was able to take your calls and keep you in compliance, keep your contracts in force, keep your contracts moving, because I was offering solutions to your problems. Because ultimately, if you close your deal, especially last year, it was a blessing that you were able to take money home to your families and to your households was a huge blessing. Every closing is a blessing. Okay. But once again, my personal commitment to be available for you guys, so that way you guys are better prepared than most other agents. And I'm not going to lie to you. Nobody's against us, guys. It's our industry that needs to self regulate. And I've taken the philosophy that, I love each and every one of you that's part of our team and part of our PRG family and such, but I don't have a problem with somebody bringing me a highly qualified buyer. That's the reason when I'm sitting at the listing table with the seller, I'm selling the value of the realtor brand and what a buyer's agent does to the transaction. So once again, we work as a team. There has to be mutual respect for one another. You can't take things personal. And furthermore, guys, let me visit on that is that do not beat up another agent at another office. I'm a giver, I'm a helper, and if you're the listing agent and there's a new agent at another office that doesn't have the love and support from the brokerage or their team lead, but they're sending you an offer and half of the blanks aren't filled in or it's not filled in correctly, help them. Because guess what? They have the number one thing your seller needs, a qualified buyer. Because if they send you a good funds letter, I wouldn't mind typing up the entire contract for them, knowing that it's going to be a good offer and we're going to get it to closing. Or if you need to fill out all the addendum, hey, are you sure hey, we're throwing in the washer, dryer, refrigerator. Did you forget that form, or does your buyer not want the washer, dryer, and refrigerator? We're even throwing in the pool table and no extra cost because they don't want to pay a mover because they're moving to Alaska, whatever. Oh yeah, I forgot to include it. It's okay. Let me take care of it for you. And I just wanted to make sure that we structure this as a win-win, mutually beneficial. And because my people do not want to dispose of it. They don't even want to put it on Facebook and Marketplace. They don't want to deal with crazy people. Right? It's a win-win. We're offering it. Did you forget it? Because if you did, let me help you. Because it benefits your client, the seller. Right? It's a win-win, guys. Communicate. It's not about who has experience, how many years you've been in the business. All that doesn't matter. If you don't close your transaction, it means absolutely nothing. Don't lose a transaction because you took it personal and emotional, or because you couldn't negotiate who was going to pay for the survey. Don't allow your transaction to die over $400. So at the end of the day, work as a team, help other folks at different offices, encourage them to come to our training or to log on to our YouTube or whatever. I don't have a problem with it. If I'm going to have a transaction with that person in the near future, why not? Why not? Because then all of a sudden, we all, especially the folks that have been in this business for a while, you know who are the pleasant people to deal with, and you know who are the people that you're like, oh my goodness, wow, our Father. You need extensive patience because you know that they're bullies, they're condescending, and da da da. But once again, keep it professional. If they have a qualified buyer, whether they don't have the skill level or they're grumpy, and those agents, it's okay, guys. As long as if you're the stronger agent, help the other agent get it past the finish line. Okay, make it a win-win for the buyer, for the selling family, and for you guys as well. Okay, I hear all the complaints, I get it, but if you call me, I will always tell you at the end who benefits from it. Our fiduciary duties: obedience, liability, disclosure, care, accountability, and responsibility. Okay, care, accountability, and responsibility. If you need to carry the other agent from the other office, it's okay, guys. Okay. Uh, yes, real estate is still a good industry to be in. Not everybody is where they need to be at, but we were all new at one time. So, with that being said, guys, um, I'm going to touch again the listing before I transition into the contract. Sell value, guys. When you're on the listing side, and then our firm actually allows intermediary. And when the market shifts, I can guarantee you that you might take on a listing on Thursday and have coming soon because they still need to move out and stage it, or finish out the restroom or whatever. I can guarantee you by the time that you go live, you already have both sides to the transaction. ERG encourages, uh, you know, I mean, you might not take them on as a client. You might treat them as a prospect or just as a consumer, right? And then write it up where you represent only the seller, but you still get compensated for both commissions. Or if you take them to see other properties and then you come back and you created an agency relationship, well, then at that moment you do need to disclose that you're going to do intermediary. Okay. On launch, they weren't your prospect, but then you took them and exposed them to 3, 5 other homes, came back, and then they decided to go with the first one. Well, then now it's intermediary. We allow it, guys. We give you the opportunity. For me, as long as we don't go into the red, we're not doing anything where we're misrepresenting or anything fraudulent. I mean, I'll go into the gray. I just won't go into the red. Okay. So once again, and that's the reason that I always encourage you. Intermediary is, or the possibility of you doing both sides to the transaction, happens to be one of the conversations that I have frequently with, the 200 agents that we have in this firm. Okay. It's okay. So let's talk about the listing once again, because our scenario from today involves full commission plus a bonus. So when you take on a listing, guys, negotiate from a position of strength. Your fiduciary duty, because we have more than 3 agents, we have 200 agents. Your fiduciary duty to your client is, Mr. Seller, our firm takes on a listing at 6, 7, and 8. Do you want minimal services, great services, or exceptional or exemplary? Take your pick, 6, 7, or 8. The moment they say, well, I didn't even think I had to pay the other agent, I said, well, the compensation belongs to our brokerage. I'm responsible to not only to collect, I'm going to do a million things for you, but I might actually have to do both sides. And then I'm wearing 2 hats. There's 2 E&Os. There's no doubt about it, guys. If you guys are involved in E&O, the seller can see you just like the buyer. So all of a sudden it's a $2,500 deductible on each side because the buyer and the seller both decided to sue you. Okay. Or another agent from this office, if you brought in another agent through appointment, right? So what ends up happening is that if you take on the listing for 6, 7, and 8%. Don't discount it. Don't. There's too much work involved for you not to pay full compensation. There's no doubt about it. Even listings that show half a point less, let's say it shows 2.5, Look at the days on market. It's 4 to 6 months. If your seller's telling you, and David Knox on Monday we do listings. If you guys haven't had an opportunity to see that 15-minute video that needs to be given to your sellers prior to you guys taking on the listing, it explains all the marketing concepts of why you need to price the property correctly, as well as pay full compensation. Because no doubt about it, a buyer's agent's being compensated for bringing a highly qualified candidate that could consummate the sale. Because if not, what you're going to do is, what's going on, guys? What's going on right now? Buyers are being delivered on a silver platter to the builders because they're paying 4, 5, 6, and 7% commission. They're covering, all the closing costs, buy down, right? They're guaranteeing a low rate. The builders are buying rates in blocks. Uh, Lennar, DR Horton, whatever. When you see that rate out there that says guaranteed 4.99, or they give you a range, is that they've already committed to a banking line, whether it be Wells, Chase, whatever, or their own. They might have their own warehouse line. We are going to deliver 1,000 or 10,000 loans to you, but we need a loan guarantee. We want to pay a flat fee, across the board. It's kind of like when we do CE here, whether there's 5 people or there's 20 people. Sometimes they'll just charge me flat fee of $100 or 150, regardless of how many people are here. It's a discount, kind of like the sand stick. Okay. So once again, how does a regular seller compete with that? Full compensation and a bonus and everything else, all closing costs, buy down, an awesome rate, which means that they have more purchasing power. That payment's a little bit more comfortable, right? Because with this inflation, folks are seeing that. I have seen people react about money in the last 30 to 60 days or this year out of character, whether they be the buyer, the seller, or agents or whatever. Everybody needs their money. Okay. So once again, when you take on a listing, your seller needs to know what they're competing against, and they're competing with the new home builders. Okay. Because the new home builder gets it. They want to keep their staff. They want them employed, because in a year or 18 months, where the rates dip into the 4s and the 5s, and it's crazy, because because no doubt about it, guys, if this settlement and these changes would have taken effect 2 years ago, when the seller didn't need us, because all they had to do was, even the worst, most inexperienced agent, would activate a property and then they had 20 or 30 offers, one better than the next, all conventional or cash, Orchard and some of these Homeward or whatever. I mean, they were in business because then they were giving people the ability to consummate a deal cash, and then they could sell their home. But then that went by wayside, because then now houses are sitting. Nobody wants to pay rent and a mortgage right now. So those programs aren't as attractive right now. But no doubt about it, if this was going on, if this would have happened 2 years ago, we probably would be under 1 million realtors nationwide right now. We would be down to under 10,000 realtors. We're anticipated to lose a lot of folks. They're not going to be able to compete in this marketplace. In their mind, they can't even get it around their head of how they're going to collect. Because we're givers, but we're not real good at collecting our money. There's a lot of people sitting out there going, there's no way that I'm going to be able to get a buyer to pay me my compensation. But once again, guys, if you negotiate from a position of strength, you let sellers know that this is truly a buyer's market. It's not going to change till at least 6 months or 12 months from now. That if they want to get to their next destination, who's going to make it happen is the buyer's agent. So not only pay, 3% compensation, pay a bonus. So that way the realtor doesn't go directly 90 miles an hour to Bernie or Spring Branch or 90 and 1604. That way they take a detour, because your listing's at 3% plus a $2,000 bonus. And that's what we have today, guys, is on Braun Oaks, 9740 Braun Run, which incidentally just went under contract through the weekend. Okay. But full compensation to the buyer's agent plus a $2,000 bonus. Okay. And right off the bat, I'm going to tell you this, guys, if you didn't do it upon listing, when you call me and you tell me the house is sitting, because the market is challenged right now. I just sat with somebody um, 2 weeks ago where they had an appraisal. Somebody was under contract. The property appraised for 315,000. They're down to 285. And that appraisal is uploaded in Associated Docs. For everybody to know, it's 315. But at 285, right now, I just checked this morning and it's still not under contract. And then as of 3 weeks ago, they did three more things. They lowered the price. They offered to pay more concessions, the maximum amount of concessions for closing costs and buy downs. And three, now they're offering a bonus. And even then, they still don't have an offer. So is it a buyer's market or is it a seller's market? It's a buyer's market. Right now, buyers have the pick of the litter, whether it be in the new home market or the existing market. And then realtors want to get paid, because if you're closing a little bit less because people are still sitting it out, well, you might as well make 4, 5, 6, and 7% compensation. Why would I go show the existing market unless you're showing them paying a bonus? And if you haven't figured it out, guys, when the seller decides, if a seller right now decides, no, I'm not paying compensation no matter what, you tell them, by not offering compensation to the buyer, you eliminate 79% of the people in this marketplace. So you're going to cater to the 21% that can pay your compensation, because people need their down payment. They need their closing costs. They need their buy downs. And now you're going to put them in a predicament where they're going to pay for the compensation too. Approximately 21 to 25% of the people. I mean, do you want to cater to a quarter of the market or 100% of the market? Right? So don't do that to yourself. Don't do it to yourself as a listing agent, and be strategic on who, and as a buyer's agent, be strategic what list you deliver to your client. Because once again, we keep on going and having this discussion of, okay, well, what happens if, what can I do and not do? Well, what you can do is have a buyer's orientation. Professional people have a buyer's orientation and educate people of what the process, the procedure is. Okay. And one of the things that needs to happen is that you need to have the conversation of, Mr. Buyer, things have changed. I need you to sign these couple of forms. One of them is information about brokerage services, and the other one happens to be my buyer's representation agreement, whether it be the short term or the long term. If you meet somebody at an open house, I would recommend the short form. If it's somebody that that was referred to you as part of your sphere of influence, I would certainly sit down and actually cover the long form. And then and be very, very specific of all the tasks that you're responsible for. So it's okay to have that conversation, guys. Mr. Buyer, things have changed in our industry. Would you like me to expose you to transactions where, or to properties where you will be responsible for my compensation? If the answer is no, okay, well then just to give you an example, let's say you're shopping in the Northwest or, Windcrest or in Stone Oak. If there's 10 properties, 3 of them might not pay compensation. So yeah, I would only be exposing you to 7 out of the 10. Would you be okay with that? Yes. And don't include them as part of your list, because they're already telling you they do not want to pay your compensation. Therefore, it is your business. You're a business within a business. You can expose them strategically to criteria that you sat down. Kind of like, hey, I want the master down. I want a pool. It needs to be on the corner. And oh no, I don't want to pay compensation. Okay, well, you eliminate those properties that aren't paying compensation, because you don't work for free. This isn't a nonprofit organization. I mean, I'll do 2 or 3 a year for that single mother, that doesn't have any money and those kinds of things. But I can't conduct business as a nonprofit organization. I don't expect for you guys to do it, because it's expensive to be a realtor. Okay. So with that being said, um, if you will join me, um, the contract, the 1 of 4, obviously the seller is Jeanette Runkle, the buyer, which is a fictitious buyer, Mark Smith, lot block, new city block, the full address. And of course, you want to use whatever is on USPS. Usually, what's on BCAD tries to match the US postal system, but a lender you would use USPS. So place normally turns into PL on USPS. So use whatever is on USPS. So conventional 5% down, $20,000, and then they're financing 95, which is 380. A plus B equals C, 400,000. Okay. In this case, there's an alarm system. So that will be conveyed. So there is an addendum for that. And it usually the fixture leases has to do with, solar panels, propane tanks, water softeners, and security systems. Okay. On the next page, um, also, it's the title company um, and their address. As far as earnest money is concerned, guys, you always want to negotiate from a position of strength. Right now, the market's not very strong, but if you want to be taken serious, it has taken us time to get people to get away from $500 and $1,000 earnest money. There's no doubt about it. When the market was very, very liquid, the not only you submitting a cash offer or conventional offer, waiving appraisal and such was powerful, but so was the earnest money. Because hey, do you want to? I even saw some deals where folks were putting the entire down payment as earnest. Okay, so imagine how powerful that was. I'm so certain that I'm going to close on your house. That $20,000 down payment, I'm going to put it down as earnest money. So you as a listing buyer's agent needed to make sure that appraisal was done or it was waived, and by the third party financing days that you absolutely knew that you were closing. Okay, I only saw those on folks that were putting more than 20% down. Appraisal was waived, option and everything was waived, and it was super clean file. But once again, negotiate from a position of strength, not weakness. Uh, but once again, at least 1%, even in this marketplace, so that way you're taken serious. If the buyer has every indication to perform, we need to make sure that they're vested in the transaction. Because the last thing you want is for them to put $500 or $1,000 of earnest money and still be looking on Zillow. And then all of a sudden they find another property with another realtor. And then all of a sudden they're terminating your contract and your buyer's rep agreement. Or they went to a new home builder without you, go, no, I don't think I want an old home. Or hey, brother, sister, cousin, best friend lives in this community. They got invited to a party, and then all of a sudden they don't like the property that they're under contract, but they only have $500 or $1,000 to lose. So no, it's a business arrangement. Okay, so once again, make sure that people are vested accordingly based on price point. If you're buying a $500,000 home and you have a problem with 1%, or $1 million home and you have a problem with 1%, which is $10,000, I mean, it questions the fact that their intention, their motivation. And then either way, if you have a senior listing agent on the other side, no. Oh, well, you won't take $500 earnest money? No, I'll take 1% and 2%. Because if your guy's buying $1 million home, why is he not putting 2 or 3%? And if they complain and they call, well, your agent, and they told me this and that, I'm like, well, you know, my agents are taught to negotiate from a position of strength, whether they're on the buying side or the listing side. Let's not waste anybody's time, guys. We have a highly motivated seller and we have a highly motivated buyer. If you have every intention to perform, you're going to get credit for it at closing. And then there's escape clauses embedded into the contract, whether it be the option, the delivery of the seller's disclosures or HOA docs, right? as well as your financing or that the property appraised. So assess motivation. There's no incentive like the financial. The title policy, who pays for it? Depends on the market. And in this case, the seller does. And then as well as they had an existing survey. Um, and I'm gonna double back to the termination option, guys, because that is a very important um, paragraph or piece of discussion or conversation is, and I talk about it frequently because I take a lot of calls and I've done a lot of trainings on this and have these discussions on the third day or the fourth day with you guys. Nothing in the contract states that if your buyer investors from out of state and they first and foremost, you guys need to realize that when you take on a client, you have to act competent. You have fiduciary duties to uphold. So it is your fiduciary responsibility to make the buyer understand that if their contract is accepted and it's executed, delivery of the money is secondary. The delivery of the contract being executed at title is secondary. The delivery of the money is primary. I don't care what the story is. They need to wire in the money, get a check, or go get a money order. If they have money under the mattress, it doesn't matter what the story is. The money now needs to be made payable to the title company. And I'm glad that they removed that responsibility from the agents, because then before you would show up to closing and, hey, where's my $250 option? Well, it was never handed to the seller. There was never an option and, accounted for or because the money wasn't delivered to title. Now it is, and it's accounted for, whether it's a wire or money order or cashier's check or whatever. But no doubt about it, once your contract is executed, your first option day starts the next 24 hours. So your contract could have gotten executed at 11:45 in the morning or at 11:45 in the evening. The for it to be an option day, it must include 24 hours. So it's the next day after execution. So if you execute it at 11:45 p.m. on Friday, day one is Saturday, day two is Sunday, day three, okay, you have till 5 o'clock on that Monday to deliver the money, unless Monday is a national holiday. Then you have till Tuesday, on or before 5 o'clock. If your buyer is off grid and they went on a cruise or they're on a plane, you need to deliver the option fee money. At least deliver the option. Okay. You can pay it on behalf of your client and they can reimburse you. But because the last thing you want is for somebody to file a complaint against you because all of a sudden your character and your integrity is going to be questioned because your buyer didn't understand or they couldn't comprehend, and it was your fiduciary duty to make them understand and comprehend, you know, the timelines and the repercussions. Because trust me, guys, if this were a HUD repo and you don't deliver the earnest money, HUD either cancels your contract and or what they'll do is that they'll bill you for the earnest money because their contract states that it's the fiduciary duty of the buyer's agent to deliver the earnest money. And if you don't deliver it, they collect it from the brokerage or from the agent because it's your fiduciary duty to ensure that your client understands that. So I can't emphasize the importance of it. If you have an investor, if you have somebody traveling and they're not going to have reception or whatever is getting on a plane or on a cruise, I wouldn't advance the earnest money. There's no penalties for not delivering the earnest money. I would advance the option. And if they don't wire in the earnest money, send them over documentation reflecting that you're going to terminate. Hey, Mr. Buyer, I need that money needs to be delivered by 4:59. If not, I'm going to send you these documents. I've already paid the 75 or the $250 for option. That way I can protect your earnest money, even though you haven't delivered it yet. Because the last thing I want is a complaint to be filed against my organization because you didn't understand the importance of delivery. Okay. So 3 days when there's no holiday before 5 o'clock, or fourth if there's a holiday. And remember this, guys, it's even kind of like even when you negotiate repairs, which is one of the next sections, is you have before 5 o'clock to deliver notice that you have the unrestricted right to terminate before 4:50, before 5 o'clock on the third or the fourth day. But you don't have an option to cancel the contract if you never delivered the money. Okay. So you're an extension of your client. You have a client relationship. It's okay, because you're being charged for murder and somebody needs to put up the bond, the family delivers the money to the attorney, and the attorney might know you, but they might advance the bond money just because they know you, knowing that they can get it from the family. So in that same capacity, I would advance the option money, not the earnest money. And remember, you have to before 5 o'clock on the third or the fourth day. Same thing like when you um, never take the word of a buyer, of a listing agent for repairs. If you have 7 days or 10 days, you send over your repair request. And if you're coming down to the wire of your last day of option, you need to also send your termination and release of earnest money. Your termination and release of earnest money must always be submitted together. But here's our repairs. And if you're not wanting to do them or offer an allowance, well, then here's the termination and the release. It is your fiduciary duty to understand the fact that you had till the seventh day. In this case, I put 10 days, right? 7 days. You have till the seventh day to give the seller notice of whether you're going to terminate or not. So if they haven't responded, because you get those agents that they're always on the verge of showing, they don't respond. They don't respond to texting, to emails, to phone calls, or nothing, you know. And if they're non-responsive, guys, it is your fiduciary duty to let their designated supervisor know. Because when you guys don't respond or anything, I'll text you. And if you don't respond to me, I'm like, unless you're in an emergency room, okay, or something's going on, I need you to pick up. Because when we have to respond to Trek, there's no excuse. Why didn't you step in as the supervisor to put corrective measures in place? Because your agent was non-responsive, wasn't responding to emails, to phone calls, to texting, nothing. And I will always tell people, hey, you have a complaint against my agent, send them an email, include me in it, and then I will get involved if she doesn't respond within 5 minutes of you including our compliance manager as well as myself in that email. It is a fiduciary duty, guys, for you guys to communicate. It helps you. You can't take care of that old car if you're not responding to emails, to textings, and to texting, and you're just plain and simple not communicating. So once again, be conscious of your timelines. Advice and opinion, your fiduciary duties. Um, and then let's talk about the survey. Who pays for the survey? I mean, sometimes I get embarrassed for agents that put things on social media or in groups. And that's the reason that I'm doing this training, is that please don't log on to a group if you don't know, if you haven't read the contract, you don't understand it, you don't comprehend it. Do not, the contract's negotiable. Who pays for the survey? And then you'll get agents based on what they were taught or their lack of not reading the contract. It's clearly identified. If there's an existing one, we want the seller to provide the existing survey because they bought it brand new from a builder. But then with the delivery of the existing one, there should be a T-47 executed and notarized. No, we didn't add a pool. No, we didn't add a cabana. No, we didn't add more square footage. I wouldn't be concerned about the doghouse or the new slab for the air conditioner. That's irrelevant. No additional square footage added to the main dwelling, no pool, no clubhouse, things of that nature. Even storage sheds, guys, aren't included, especially if they're on Pair B. But once again, you have to deliver those two documents. Now, if you're a smart listing agent, And you don't want to put your seller in a predicament, right? Because it doesn't matter if the seller or the buyer, you check off on number one, buyer or seller. If the seller doesn't, if there is an existing survey and the seller doesn't deliver both an existing survey and the T47, in this case, on day 8, the seller gets to pay for any survey. Imagine having that conversation with the seller, because then it's being deducted off your net. They were going to make, 100,000. Now they make 99,000, 5, So know your timelines. Also, when you take on the listing, do it then. If your seller says they have one and they can't find it, well, no, I'm not disclosing that. You need to find, when I leave or when I come back, you need to have that survey, or and I'll have a T47 for you for you to sign for us. Okay. Um, and then the second option is the buyer, because when the market changes and you're insisting for the seller to pay for a survey that doesn't exist, and you check off for the seller to provide an existing one, and they're telling you it doesn't exist, you're just trying to trick the other agent by using number one. Don't do it. Don't play games. Don't lose a house over $400. Don't do it. Because clearly, if you know that there's not an existing survey, your options are number 2 and number 3. No, Mr. Buyer, there's no existing one. I'm not playing that game. I see that this agent's from this company. I'm seeing their license number. They take on a lot of listings. Let's keep it clean. Because one of your jobs, one of your main responsibility, guys, is to help your client enter contracts, right? Negotiate, strategize, offer the best terms, or advise on the best terms for them to secure the property. You help them enter into contracts, keep them in force, as well as exit the contracts. Okay, so once again, the survey is complicated, and if please don't get on a chat without reading the contract. Please do not open your mouth. You remember you're a licensee. You shouldn't be talking real estate when you've had too much to drink at a party, and you should not be talking about something that you don't know anything about on any Facebook chat. Okay, do your due diligence, because then that questions your competency. Okay, and PRG Platinum is known for having experienced agents. Okay, uh, objections. Once again, they recommend that you put residential, but if you're already using a 1 or 4, it's already assumed that it's residential. Now, if a property is mixed use and you feel that you need to put residential, because they are properties that are on busy streets like San Pedro or North Main, Northwest Military. What's going on with Northwest Military? It used to be residential. All that's getting ready to turn into commercial. It's a very busy street. 2 lanes coming and going with a median. It happened to San Pedro. It happened to North Main. There's many streets to Hildebrand. If your house faces a busy street, an appraiser or the county or the Bear Appraisal District can determine that highest and best use of that property is not residential. It's commercial because it faces a busy street. It could easily turn into a law firm or a restaurant, okay, because it has a storefront. Okay, so in that case, if you're still trying to get that loan, because your mother lives close to there or whatever your need might be, and you want to put residential, sure, not a problem. Okay, but moving on from there, the title policy is very important. I can't even emphasize. But when you guys take on a listing, have the experience enough to know that if it's complicated, get your escrow officer involved, run that scenario by them, have them do the due diligence up front. If it was an estate sale, if they file bankrupt, they are going to need to know all of that. They need their social and their date of birth, because we've been involved with deals where the husband and the wife were both married 2-3 times. I had a deal like blew up 10 years ago. Wasn't our deal, it was a deal from our agent, that the dad was previously married, but then the mother was too, and she had children too. The rest of the family didn't know that she had two other children with another man. She just left that man and forgot about those two children. But in doing the due diligence at title, they found out, can you verify that she actually didn't have any children and da da da? Well, the only way to do it was to get an affidavit of heirship. And they actually found out that she had children. That deal never closed. Okay. So once again, when you take on the listing, do your due diligence. That way, remember, it's a team effort, guys. It takes an army to close a transaction. Don't get your buyer. Don't go live with the listing. You know it's complicated because then you just wasted the the buyer's agent's time, the buyer's hopes and dreams. You negotiated the deal of a lifetime. Everybody wants the deal to close, and all of a sudden you have horrible title issues that could have been avoided or prevented. You have, remember, when you guys are in real estate, you have a team, and that team involves home inspectors, lenders, title companies, and such. Use those resources. Okay. Um, HOA. Anybody want to talk about HOA? Okay, I'm having problems with my own HOA. They're like, wow, um, collecting a lot of money, but they're not doing their part. They stole my car. I live in a gated community. They stole my car like 6 weeks ago, and they just doubled our fees. So once again, but at the end of the day, I believe in them. And now it's actually federal law. There will not be another community anywhere where there's a tract home builder. There must be an HOA, and that's been in the last 6 to 12 months. It is state federal law throughout the country where there must be an HOA when there's a tract home builder. I think it mentions, I want to say, over 25 homes or 50 homes approximately. So uh, they're good. They're good for the community. They're good for resale, those kinds of things, as long as they're being managed correctly. Um, Tidewater, we're not by the coast. Annexation, okay. And let's talk about that. The city is growing. I actually live off Kyle Seal. If I call the police, the county shows up. But if I were in the neighboring subdivision, SAPD shows up. So based on your address, the respective police shows up. But that's not to say that we're going to get annexed here very shortly because the city's growing. They need the income for the infrastructure and such. But once again, if you don't know, it's okay to tell people, I'll need to get that clarified. I'll need to do some due diligence for you. I'll get back with you. And never disclose things that aren't necessarily true. Okay. Um, Everything else is not that important. Um, One of the things that I wanted to mention to you guys, and we had somebody that they filed a complaint at TREP with. Here, our buyer's agent brought a cash buyer to consummate the deal, and they weren't ready to close. But at the same time, we have hoarder situations. We've been involved in deals where, I mean, there was an 86-year-old lady that needed a little bit more time, but then you negotiate a temporary lease back, right? Um, but then we've been involved in deals where the buyer and the seller close at 11 and they haven't moved out yet and no lease is in place. It is your fiduciary duty. If your buyer is telling you, no, 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 I need access to that house on Friday at 5 o'clock, the moment it closes its funds, you have the right to go by there and knock on the door going, hey, what's going on? Or call the other agent, schedule appointments, whatever you need to do through showing time. Hey, I'm needing to do my final walkthrough. I can't, better yet, don't deliver your client to the closing table unless you're able to do your walkthrough. Your final walkthrough should be done within 24 hours of closing. If you do it a week ago and you assume certain things and the seller was waiting for money to be able to pay for the movers, and your buyer's going to be upset because here they're thinking they're getting their new refrigerator and their furniture moved in. It is another duty that you have, because then all of a sudden you need to put on your boxing gloves or pick up your sword and shield and start negotiating either money, consideration, a lease back. It involves liability. I had a deal, guys, a couple of years ago, that the day of the walkthrough, The seller yanked out the refrigerator, and at 9 o'clock in the morning, the buyer did their walkthrough 2 hours later, and the house was completely flooded. So, and the seller had already signed and said, well, not my problem. I said, no, sir, it is your problem because right now you still own this house. You need to file an insurance claim with, luckily enough, you had USA. You need to file a claim with your carrier because you have a water damage claim because the buyer doesn't want to buy your property. So once again, a seller is responsible through 11:59. Even though you close in fund at 5 o'clock, the seller is still responsible to 11:59 insurance wise. Contractual wise, no, but insurance wise, they will cover you through 11:59. Okay, and then of course they would remediate that with the new carrier. Okay, but once again, you when you do your final walkthrough, the buyer has every right, and it stipulates in the contract. Because I've had agents yell and call and screamed and upset at our agent. I'm like, but your seller's involved in a real estate transaction. The contract states that it's their responsibility to have all utilities on, so that way inspections can be conducted. Utilities should be on through the day of closing and funding because you need to do that final walkthrough. We were involved in another complaint at Trek that went nowhere. That the buyer was wanting to strategically get an air conditioner rather than file because the seller paid for a home service plan. A week later, we heard about it the day of closing. So when the agent called me, I said, you know what you need to do is you need to go to the house, walk the home, take a video, and take a video of the air conditioner working. Man, I'm so glad that I told her that. Because when he got his friend from Del Rio, which that's where I'm from, to drive from Del Rio to Potranco in 1604, not to maintain the unit, they changed out the unit. And then they filed a complaint with Trek wanting the seller to reimburse him for that unit. But embedded in the contract was a home service plan. There was no claim filed. There was no service call made or suggested, hey, I'm doing a service call. You need to replace your unit. He knew he had full intentions of just replacing the unit. Well, Trek declined the complaint, because he wasn't acting in earnest. All right. And that video of the agent saved us. Hey, this was the day of closing with timestamp. What do you mean? It's working properly. And I mean, it was amazing. It made that issue go away very quickly. So, anyways, always do your inspections for your protection. Get a home inspection, whether regardless of financing. Okay, and if you're working with investors, not only take inspectors, but take out your tradespeople. Take your tradespeople to go look at them. Don't rely on a home inspector, because in the commercial arena, they don't call out home inspectors. They call out the tradespeople. Okay, the people that are actually going to do the work. Sellers disclosures. Get those sellers disclosures filled out properly, uploaded. If there's anything that the seller mentions as to settlement or electrical, plumbing, foundation, whatever, make sure you document and also upload it. Okay, well, you just checked off yes. I'm going to need an explanation. I'm going to need paper trail where the plumber fixed it, the hayback cleaned the coils or whatever. If there's settlement or whatever, did you get a report from somebody that's licensed to do those kinds of reports? If you got insurance money and didn't use it for its intended purpose, you need to know about it, because that could potentially affect the insurance for whoever's going to buy it. I was just involved in a deal 45 days ago, right after it hailed through the weekend. And I called the agent and said, hey, everything looks good and everything. We're closing in the next couple of weeks. We're on pace to close on or before our timeline. However, my buyer is concerned about the hail. And the question was, hey, can you get the seller to provide an insurability letter, make sure that the roof's okay? And I asked nicely. He said, okay, I can do that. Well, I'm an insurance agent, guys. I'm an actually insurance broker. Been licensed since 2008 and even beyond, because I used to do life insurance and When I used to do small loans at the bank, we had to write insurance as well. So what ends up happening is that I have an insurance license. I'm an insurance broker, and you'll always get that perspective from me. I didn't want to go tick for tack with her, so I just said, "Hey, my buyer wants an insurability letter for their carrier in the event that they're asked because we just got hit." And sure enough, she came back 2 days later. Same thing. I think I want to say it was Allstate. They came back and they said, "Well, I couldn't get the letter for you, but the carrier has decided to replace the roof. So it's going to be 16,000, and they're already having to come to the table with money because they bought in 2022. They already have to come to the table with money. So can you see if your buyer would pay the deductible, but they'll be getting a new roof. So they got a 35-year dimensional roof. It's gorgeous, and only had to pay $3,000. And we got their carrier to replace the roof. Okay, because just if you guys don't know, you know this now. A seller will never be penalized for weather related claims or acts of God. We don't control the weather. Okay. Now, if you leave on vacation, on a cruise, or to go to the grocery store and you leave the washer on and it floods your house, you know, and you leave for a week, well, then you're penalized for that because you were at the home to protect it, you know. So, but not weather related claims. So it was a win. It was a win-win, because the seller really needed to sell and our buyer really wanted to buy. And then to top it all off, they got a new roof. So as nicely, because that had we gotten that insurability letter, and let's say something were to happen 2, 3, 4 years down the road, and they said, no, we're not going to replace it because the roof already had reached its economic life. We're not going to replace it. There was pre-existing issue with the previous owner. No, ma'am. Here's an insurance. Here's an insurability letter from a major carrier saying that they did a statistical analysis on the roof, and in July of 2024, the impact wasn't sufficient where it warrant replacement. So here it is, 2028. That is not a pre-existing issue because you asked for that documentation from the seller. Okay. Um, Nobody is exempt from lead-based paint addendum. That is a federal form. If we were ever audited and we didn't have lead-based paint addendum, and then with it being completely executed, there's actually fines handed down by Housing and Urban Development. The lead-based paint addendum even has to be um, disclosed on a rental. I had a couple that showed up here the other day. The daughter already had special needs. She was around 3 years old, and they wanted to get pre-qualified, uh, uh, but they didn't qualify. But I did tell them, you need to take your daughter out of this house because I mean, if the doctor's already telling you that she's got lead in her body and her organs, you need to take her out because your problem is it's your house. The house was like 80 years old. It's already so embedded into the walls that remember this: if you ever read the lead-based paint disclosure, it specifically attacks children under the age of 6, and she was 3. The breathing, and she hadn't lived anywhere else. So I said, you need to get out of this house today, go rent an apartment built after 1978, so that way your daughter could start breathing good air, or she needs to be sitting outside. They weren't even taking her outside, and now she's no longer walking and functioning and all that other stuff. That's horrible. I had a situation with a sister-in-law. She has 5 kids. Her husband owns a funeral home, and then all of a sudden, on the latest child, what ended up happening is that they were thinking that she was poisoning her child. It ended up being the lead in the house. So they tried to take away the kids and all of it. It was big. It was a big drama. Once they realized that it was lead-based paint, the city of San Antonio came in and practically took out everything down to the studs, and they built a brand new house for her. They put in new electrical, plumbing, insulation, HVAC system, and everything. But it was the house. So moving quickly through the contract, closing and funding. Yes, sir. Uh-huh. Yeah, what it is that it's all about limiting your liability. Okay. So what ends up happening is this is that if you lived in the property, it has to be the one that's more detailed. Okay. Yes. And then if you're an investor, I think it needs to be the one that's more detailed because you're the one, because a lot of people think that a wholesaler or an investor that becomes the principal, the owner, it's not an assignment, it didn't end up with anything else. If you're an investor and you're the one that's going to got a hard money loan or you paid cash and you're the one that's going to change out the AC, the roof, and the electrical and the plumbing, you're not exempt from it. You're not exempt from it. Now, if you're in a state, you are. So what it is that my recommendation is always disclose, 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 because in a court of law, they're going to ask you now, Mr. Investor, explain it to me like I'm a 3-year-old. Why did you feel that you needed to use this form rather than this form? Why didn't you disclose all of that? All right. And then they're going to look to the agent. Oh, well, my agent provided me the wrong form. Right? Why is it wrong? Well, what it is that it has to do with detailing. If you lived in the property or you fixed the property and you know as much knowledge of it as possible, it's best for you to over disclose rather than under disclose. And if you're an agent, you don't want to be part. Do not ever try to protect somebody because then you become uh, and when you could have provided a form, especially if you know that there's been a major rehab or previous foundation or previous fires and previous roof claims, the line of questioning is different. There's more yes and no remarks, you know. So once again, your job, remember, your number one job as a fiduciary is to protect the general public because they don't have a real estate license. They don't know any better. They rely on licensees upholding fiduciary duties that have a code of ethics. So don't ever try to protect an investor because trust me, they're all about the money. The moment that you're being sued or we're being sued or you're having to write all these letters and explanations, I mean, they're not going to help you. So put yourself in a position where you're protecting your license is what I would tell you. Okay. You never want your character or integrity questioned as far as your competency and the disclosure process. If a seller's telling you they did foundation work, I need the paperwork. Do you have a warranty? We need to transfer the warranty the day of closing. And let's talk about that. When foundation work has been done on a property, that all of that paperwork needs to be provided to the buyer. They have the right to see it. They have the right to have that warranty transferred over for their protection well into the future. Because these foundation companies, upon transfer, if it's from the person that did it to the new person, there's no problem. But if you allow 30 and 60 and 90 days to go by, they're going to want to go back. Well, we'll cover it, but because you didn't do it at closing, we're going to do a plumbing static test. And if there's problems with plumbing, we'll expect to fix them. Or we can decide not to provide our warranty. Right? So you have to be knowledgeable about procedures and protocols and reducing risk. And it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you are. Whether you represent the seller and the buyer, you have to work. Hey, Mr. Listing Agent, we just had a situation that just happened. Luckily enough, the buyer was so Google Gaga over the house that he said, okay, well, I get it. I'm not going to get the warranty because it had skipped the seller. So it wasn't even the seller, it was the previous seller that had gotten the warranty paperwork. It wasn't transferred over to the new seller. So the new seller now couldn't transfer to our buyer. The only way that we make that happen, once again, because I'm an insurance broker, I'm like, look, what we can do here, and if you still really want to move forward on this house, is that we're needing to beef up your insurance. What we're going to do is that we're not going to give you the bare bones. We're going to give you the highest level of coverage in the state of Texas, which happened to be a homeowner's B policy, homeowner's broad policy, which included foundation up to 15%. It was a $300,000 home. 15% of 300,000, 45,000 on the foundation. Okay. Full replacement costs. It even had mold coverage and foundation, just an unbelievable amount of coverage. We beefed it up. And furthermore, guys, just so that you realize that not all insurance companies are the same. I have USAA because my spouse is military and, you know, but as far as homeowners is concerned, USAA doesn't insure you from the house to the street. They only insure the house. So when my pipe busted outside of my house, I had to pay $3,500. It wasn't included in my policy. So on these people, what we did is that we included service line coverage, which took the plumbing, the protection of the plumbing from the house to the street. It's called service line coverage. So not only did we do all the bells and whistles on HOB policy, but we added a service line coverage and this plumbing stoppages and everything else. So they got the best policy that you can get in the state of Texas to include all the bells and whistles and through addendums and such. Okay. So once again, disclosure, disclosure, disclosure.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Regard to, I have those, the buyer agent, a little bit.
Yeah.
The stance. Like,
No, no, no. What ends up happening, that's kind of like when you deal with a relocation company, when you deal with an estate, um, you will always get by advice from attorneys, a special warranty deed rather than a general warranty deed. And the difference really is that the moment that the bank foreclosed on it, or it became an estate, part of the estate right, they're advising you that you're going to take liability from the moment mom died, right? Through the day that you sold the property, compared to the general warranty deed, which they might have owned it for 100 years, that takes you back to the day when they bought it. So there's more protections for the buyer, but at the end of the day, it's an acceptable deed as long as you're getting title insurance. Okay. So yeah, disclosure, disclosure, disclosure. So one of the main things that I didn't want to cover here is in special provisions. If you notice how many people do we have on Zoom? Okay. One of the things that I wanted to cover, and going back to uh, the compensation, if you will read I'm going to read it to you first so that you realize why it's so important that you mention it in special provisions. Because once again, when we're talking to the buyers, we're telling them that compensation is going to come from the builder, from the seller, bucket one and bucket two. Bucket three is going to come from closing costs or concessions. And then number four, the difference from the buyer. So in talking to a couple of underwriters, you're not going to be able to bulk it in paragraph 12B. That is specifically, seller shall also pay an amount not to exceed $12,000 to be applied in the following order: buyer's expenses, which buyer is prohibited from paying by FHA, Texas Veterans Land Board, or other government loan programs, and then to other buyer's expenses as allowed by the lender. Okay. Well, they will allow buyers prepaids, closing costs, buy downs, and such, but they want the compensation right now. They want the compensation broken out, separating the buyer's costs from compensation. So you're going to have to do that in special provisions. Okay. Seller is to pay for 3% of buyer's compensation rolled into the sales price in addition to 12B. So that way you're separating the two. And furthermore, remember, guys, that if you go to the compensation section, which is should I pass it up? If you go to the compensation side, it already talks to you about it's actually 8, broker or sales agent disclosure. I'm sorry. Paragraph B, 8B, broker's fees. All obligations of the parties for payment of broker's fees are contained in separate written agreements. And that is referenced, it's 8B. Broker's fees. All obligations of the parties for payment of broker's fees are contained in separate written agreements. In other words, the exclusive right to list, as well as the buyer's representation agreement. And then once you submit your offer, you have to verify the compensation that's going to get paid. And then you need to send that over. You need to send over the compensation between brokers, and you have to pin it in. So do not get to the closing table and assume based on a text or an email or what's on their website. You do need to make the compensation among brokers part of this contract. It's not listed. There will still be other revisions from here till August 17th on these contracts. Okay. This is not the final draft. They still need to fine tune it a little bit more. Okay. So once again, your buyer's rep agreement needs to be in place before you show your first property. And to the point that what we're going to have to do, guys, is that here, our policy right now has been that you guys have to submit your package within 10 days of closing. Well, now our policy is changing effective immediately. You guys will be required to turn in your executed contract, your compensation agreement between brokers or for sale by owner, as well as your short form or long form buyer's representation agreement. Because guess who's driving the compensation, guys? I'm sorry, guess who's driving the CD? Not the title company. The title company has become, they become pencil pushers on the CD. I mean, they know what the compensation is for the builder, but if you're charging an extra 1% or a transaction fee, who's driving the CD is the lender, guys. So that's the reason we're going to try to help you. So that way you guys are in compliance. Because Clint sending out a CD to you and to the title company means absolutely nothing. Because many people are approved with certain contingencies. Because then all of a sudden your automated approval might state, hey, buyer has $15,000 to work with. They need $12,000 total out of pocket, but they need a month in reserves. You can't splurge on the buyer at the last minute that you're going to charge 1% of 300,000 when that's already three. You've eaten up the reserves plus another $500 transaction fee. The underwriter, your loan officer, your processing team, and the underwriter and whoever's going to touch the file and the closer need to know if the buyer is going to be responsible for any part of your compensation, because that might affect eligible funds to close. And then your loan officer needs, because what happens if I did a deal the other day. You know, the guy had been working for a major corporation for over 12 years. He said he didn't have any money, but then he said the money for the down payment and closing costs was going to come from his 401k. He had crazy money in there. And at that moment, as the loan officer, hey, how much money do you want to pull out? Was the question. He could pull out up to 20%. I think he ended up pulling out 10 because he wanted some additional monies for furniture and stuff and to pay off some additional debt and stuff. So once again, the loan officer needs to know if any compensation will not be paid by the builder and the seller, that now it needs to be part of your loan estimate. The buyer needs to know, as well as their lender needs to know, if there's any other fees that they need to account for to determine eligible funds to close. Okay.
Is the term on this agreement of compensation between brokers, is that, because this just has one day, would it be the closing date from when you start until the closing date?
Well, what it is that when you submit your offer, you have to include that compensation among brokers. You've already verified that they're going to pay you 3% plus a $2,000 bonus. I wouldn't get to closing without having that end in as part of your original body of work.
So
it needs to be
this extend to closing.
Well, yeah, from there to whenever you're, hey, I'm submitting the offer today, and we're going to close on August 15th. Absolutely. Okay. And then it becomes part of the contract. So if the moment you extend the contract, you extend the compensation as well. Yes. Yes. Correct. Correct. Kind of like leases, right? We have to respect a lease, an exclusive right to list, a buyer's rep agreement. Yours can't begin until this one terminates. But if there's an extension, it extends the body of work along with it. Okay. So I can't emphasize enough what we're going to have to do on our end, guys, because we need to try to make it easy for you, for your lender, for the builder, for the people at title, as well as for Mr. Clint. You know, that we need to do it up front rather than at the end. Because if you're having to revise your buyer's rep agreement, it will need to be done 10 days prior to closing. We prefer that it be done with your initial body of work, because you have to realize that that Second Amendment, okay, will need to be executed by the buyer. If the builder's paying a bonus, they can't find out about it at closing. And you can't charge more than what they agreed to pay you. So that's the reason on that class tomorrow that I talk about in new construction up to 7% compensation, you're covered. But if your initial agreement only said 3 and they're paying 7, that money needs, you have to get an amendment signed by the buyer, right? For that additional 4%, that they're agreeing that they're okay you being paid for it. And if they don't, you have to negotiate it with them. Because then they say, no, I want half of it. Can you rebate it? Because I need to buy some furniture. Okay. So avoid the conversation. Do it up in the long form. Correct. Correct. So if you're going to do it on the short form, long form, it's okay. But just on the construction section, put up to 7%, or even on the existing market, put up to 4%. That would include, or if you do 4 plus a $500 transaction, we'll do 4.25. That way it includes all your monies in there. Okay. So I'm not going to cover the addendums or anything. What I'm going to cover, guys, is the if you get a referral fee from a home service plan, whether it be a water softener, a home service plan, a security company, if you get a referral fee, it has to be disclosed. It's a service provider, and there is a form for it called disclosure relationship with contract provider or administrator. And this includes any third party where you guys are allowed to get some additional compensation. Okay. But once you collect it once, it must always be included on all of your contracts, regardless of whether you're going to call it in or not. Because let's say it's American Home Shield, and they just, not American Home Shields, but it's a BFI. Okay. Here's your 4 options. You know, pick one. They didn't pick BFI. They picked American Home Shield. American Home Shield isn't compensating. You still have to disclose this form because BFI paid you one time 10 years ago. You will always need to disclose it. If you have gotten one referral fee from a security company or home service provider, water softener company, you have to disclose that you have gotten compensation from another source. Now, general information about notice to buyers and sellers, this is already part of your checklist, guys. And it also covers the insurance section of it. So cover it with your respective buyers and sellers because it outlines a million things that you're on the lookout for that continues to add value. That's part of your value proposition. Okay. I can't emphasize enough where they need to know all the things that you're involved in or that you could potentially be involved in. Because most people think that this is a walk in the park and it's not. So here you go, compensation agreement between brokers. And I have it here, 3% plus a $2,000 bonus as an example. Okay, and if it's signed by the other agent, and remember, you guys can sign it on my behalf or the broker can sign it, but I'd rather you guys sign it. It's just going to keep everybody honest. Okay, so don't wait till the last minute. That submit all of your paperwork in one DocuSign. That way it's covered. And when you submit your offer, it needs to be part of your package. We need to know about it because then Clint's going to go to that compensation agreement. It says that you get a $2,000 bonus. Well, guess what? He's going to include it in your CDA. Furthermore, if your buyer's rep agreement says that in addition to the 3% and then the $2,000 bonus, they're still going to pay you another $500, your buyer's rep agreement, the compensation amounts brokers, and the CDA all must match together, and we need to deliver that to the mortgage company and the title company. The mortgage company will ensure the underwriter and the processor and the closer and the funder know about it. Okay. But if we have to do anything within 10 days of closing and you've been under contract for 30 days, for 4 months or 6 months, there will be a penalty eventually. Okay. I mean, right now we're going to work through the kinks, but you need to start submitting your full packages at the beginning rather than at the end. Intermediate notice, I'm going to cover on Friday. But what I do want to cover is the appraisal, guys. On your third-party financing addendum, on a conventional deal, you don't need to use this addendum concerning right to terminate due to lender's appraisal. If you go to the third-party financing addendum, have it here, and you go to section 2A, right? Not only is the financing contingent, but if you go to 2B, property approval. If buyer's lender determines that the property does not satisfy lender's underwriting requirements for the loan, included but not limited to appraisal, insurability, and lender required repairs, it includes value and repairs, right? And buyer, not later than 3 days before the closing day, may terminate this contract by giving seller notice of termination, copy of a written statement from the lender setting forth the reasons for lender's determination, and that's a statement of credit denial. If buyer terminates under this paragraph, the earnest money will be refunded to the buyer. If buyer does not terminate under this paragraph, property approval is deemed to have been obtained. 3 days before closing and funding, you can't do it on day 2. So the moment you get that appraisal, it doesn't appraise and you've already negotiated, you need to be able to get it to the seller with a statement of credit denial reflecting we can't move forward because it didn't appraise or doesn't meet lender requirements, whatever. And the statement of credit denial, and as well as your release of earnest money and your termination for the purpose of the appraisal or financing. Okay. So is the addendum concerning right to terminate due to lender's appraisal required in this marketplace? No. In this marketplace, no. But at the end of the day, just know that once the market shifts and changes, we will start seeing waivers and partial waivers. The property's on the market for $380, partial waiver. Okay, I'll pay as much as $390, right? Is a partial waiver. Or I really want it. I'm going to offer 20,000 or 50,000. I'm going to just waive it and make up the difference. And hopefully by then, guys, because right now I'm talking to some of you guys, the automated underwriting system uses an AVM to see the deeds registered a public record. I've just closed up a couple of deals, one in Windcrest and one in Colotis, where initially I had gotten an approval waiving the appraisal. One wasn't being required, but because the market's deteriorating and properties are sitting and folks are really negotiating the prices down and then offering closing costs and all that, that we're not getting full waivers. I had one where upon submission, it was waived. And like 2 weeks before closing, when I was thinking I was going to get my clear close, all of a sudden the automated underwriting system kicked out. Oh no, we want the property inspected. They wanted to see that it actually existed. They wanted the appraiser to walk through the property to validate it existed or whatever, even though they were putting 30% down. Now in Windcrest, the guy put 30% down, had crazy money in reserves. It required an appraisal because the house was like 50 years old. It was gorgeous with the pool and everything, but because the surrounding neighborhoods around Windcrest, it wasn't like it was the Dominion or Stone Oak, right? Where everything's consistent. The moment that you pass Windcrest, all of a sudden, it's a different world. So all of a sudden it required, even though the nurse was putting 30% down, it required a full blown appraisal. And thank God it did appraise. I mean, the comparables were there as well as it was way. Okay. So, does anybody have any questions?
Did you figure out how the money is gonna get held or PayPal or whatever? Or
For retainer fees? What it is that there's already an invoice in our system, kind of like when you guys get paid for rentals, um, as well as it's going to be kind of like retainer fees, collecting the retainer fees. Because just know this is that all monies need to be made out to the broker. They'll be receipted in and then issued back to you. I'm not sure if I'm ready to do the Venmo and the Zelle thing because that can get out of control. Because I'm needing to figure out how that will impact the accounting on our end. Because we already get a crazy amount of checks and the allocation of them and everything. Because when you guys are on those plans, when you guys cap, and the only thing we're getting is a $200 check from title, they're not sending us the CD. They're not. So we're needing for you guys to upload your final executed CDs at the end, as well as your final walkthroughs, as well as close out your listings. Okay. But we're needing to connect the monies. And we have a lot of people that cap or that they're on prepaid plans where once again we need to be careful what we commit to. So right now it would be easier for you to create the invoice and then request Clint to send out a square invoice because then we'll be able to allocate the invoice with the monies. Okay. And then Clint, it's coming. Can you be on the lookout? Right. I'm gonna need to figure that out and open up maybe a Venmo account because once again there's a lot of people that don't have Venmo that don't have Zelle. I mean, so we're gonna have to open up 4 different accounts from 4 different sources. Zelle. Okay. Okay. Well, what it is that the money needs to come to the broker, and then we would need to disperse that out to you guys. Okay, because the last thing we want is for somebody to go, well, I gave that woman $300 and she didn't show me anything, and she showed me one, and then she didn't show me the rest of the 4, and then all of a sudden they just filed a complaint, they question your integrity, and we're going to spend more money when it would have been easier for you not to collect anything and taking the risk. So once again, I'm needing to do some additional research to find out what's going to be highest and best use of our time, money, and resources, as well as not put you guys in a compromising position. Okay. Alrighty. So once again, guys, I thank you for joining us. Go ahead.
Encourage everybody to use Forewarn.
Mhm.
It's an amazing product. It's free, safe, and you find out an incredible amount of information just based on some.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Guys, we have resources available to you, not only in this office, through Sabor, through TAR, and through NAR. Okay. You need to tap into your resources. Forewarn is an application that's free to the realtor community that because you don't know many of these people and the market's moving very quickly, or it's going to start to move very quickly, and you're going to take on clients at the grocery store and at Starbucks and at open houses and such. The moment you get their phone number, put it into Forewarn and make sure that you're not going to put yourself in a safety predicament or um, you know um, and in those kinds of compromising situations. So once again, in closing, guys, I want to encourage you guys to continue attending the trainings, become very well versed on what's going on, be the leaders of our industry, help out your fellow realtors if they're not getting the support that they need and you're involved in a transaction with them. Be a buddy, not a bully. Okay. And help other people. We're all struggling. There's going to be challenges, but we're going to get through this. It's going to be the way of doing business. But Let's negotiate from a position of strength, not weakness. Let's take value in our profession. I certainly recommend, remember, guys, you guys get tuition reimbursement with us. Every 24 months, you get up to $300. Okay. So invest in yourselves, and take your business to the next level. What's coming in the horizon is going to be something good. You know, uh, just get ready. You know, uh, the knowledge, the quest for knowledge will help you. Okay. So we are here. You guys, you have my commitment. It is my goal and always, to use my knowledge, my experience, my education. Guys, I hear a lot of stuff about other brokers where they're leading teams that are not even the brokers. You're getting it directly through the broker. I've established the policy that we're going to take in this marketplace as PRG Platinum. I'm responsible for 200 of you guys. Okay. But just know this, and I don't like to brag and earn. It's not about that. But just know that when you call me, guys, I'm using my skills, my knowledge, my education, my experience to help you problem solve and help you protect your license. And of course, to ensure that you're a successful entrepreneur. I want to see you guys succeed. So I've been a real estate broker. I will be 24 years in September. I have an insurance license. I'm an insurance broker. I'm a mortgage broker. I've been in banking since January of 1995. I graduated from college in December of 1994, and I immediately went to go work for a bank, within 30 days. So I know banking, I know insurance. Have helped thousands of people with their claims, and their insurance policies and such. And once again, insurance, mortgage, real estate. And I used to work to be a closer for housing and urban development for approximately 2 years. I used to close 8 to 12 transactions in my office. I was the escrow officer, operations manager for housing and urban development through Michael Casey, attorney at law. I serviced 36 counties. Okay. So once again, we have a very special brokerage. So once again, let's help our real estate community by being informed and helping your respective clients get past that closing table. That is what's most important right now, because there's a lot of deals falling apart, guys. There's people that don't know how to problem solve. They don't know what to do. It's easier to just send over a termination or a credit denial or whatever. You know that I'm available after hours through the weekend and on national holidays for you. Okay. So with that being said, go out there and know that we're here to help you. Not only myself, but our entire team here. Okay. Clint, Christina, Alejandra, Keith, Melissa, Nancy, Augie, we're all here to help you guys. Okay. So thank you guys. Take care. We'll see you guys tomorrow.